Have you ever wondered why a man pulls away just when you thought he was getting closer only to show up again, haunted by something he refuses to name? In the silent corridors of his psyche, obsession does not wear the mask of passion, wears stillness, a delay in his reply, a gaze that lingers too long, an absence that stings, only to be followed by a sudden and inexplicable return. This is not detachment. This is torment wrapped in restraint, an unconscious war between desire and denial. Now, what he doesn't say speaks louder than what he dares admit. And in that silence, a woman attuned to her own inner truth can feel the pull. Not of love, no, not yet, but of projection. Of a man haunted by the echo of a feminine energy that touched something he buried long ago, because obsession, in its most secret form, does not begin with possession. It begins with recognition. It's not of you exactly, but of himself, through you. A man does not become obsessed with a woman for who she is on the surface. He becomes obsessed because she stirs his anima, the unconscious feminine within his soul, the inner muse he cannot name. Carl Jung called it the anima possession, a phenomenon as old as myth. It is not you he chases. It is the part of himself he lost. And now, glimpses in your presence. But you, radiant in your mystery, do not yield easily. You have done the shadow work. You are not here to mother his wounds or shape yourself into his projection. And that makes you dangerous to his ego, to his illusion of control. For he cannot contain what he cannot understand, and yet he is magnetized to your stillness like a moth to flame. You've noticed it, haven't you? The way he watches you when he thinks you're not looking, the way he mirrors your words without realizing, the way he asks questions that circle your soul but never quite land on the surface. He isn't interested in small talk. He is trying to decode something ancient, something primal, something that belongs not to the present moment, but to the dreamscape of his unconscious. And yet he runs, because to be seen by a woman who sees herself is terrifying. He is not prepared for the clarity of your gaze. For you do not just reflect light, you reflect truth. Truth, when a man is not ready, feels like invasion, so he retreats, tells himself stories. She's too much, she's too strong, too mysterious. But late at night, when the noise dies down and the distractions fade, it's your voice he hears, your silence, rather, your absence, shaped like a question he cannot answer. There is a reason why some men disappear when they feel the pull of a real woman. Not because they do not want her, but because they are not yet whole enough to stand in her presence. The feminine energy that has integrated her shadow does not beg. She does not chase. She does not explain her value. She simply exists. Her existence becomes unbearable to a man still at war with himself. And so begins the loop. He leaves. He watches. He returns. He hovers on the edge of your orbit, like a satellite afraid to crash. He'll send mixed signals, half-truths, unspoken apologies disguised as questions. He cannot name it. But you have taken root in the soil of his psyche. But here's the secret that changes everything. You don't have to do anything, because the moment a man becomes obsessed in the shadows is the moment. He has lost control of his own reflection. And the deeper he tries to bury the feelings, the more power they hold. It is not your pursuit he fears. It is your presence. It unmasks him. And for a woman grounded in her power, this becomes the turning point. Not a game, not a strategy, but a knowing, the knowing that his obsession is not your responsibility, that what he projects onto you is his myth to unravel, that you are not here to carry the weight of his unconscious, nor to soothe the ache of his spiritual amnesia. You are here to embody, to breathe, to choose, to allow the dance to unfold, but never to abandon yourself for the sake of being desired. He feels her, even in her silence. And yet, silence to him is not absence, is pressure. It is the quiet gravity that bends his thoughts toward her day after day, even as he tries to force them elsewhere. Obsession does not scream, it does not beg, it whispers. In the most ordinary of moments, in the smell of rain, it's the shadow of a passing stranger, the ghost of a sentence half-remembered, her energy intrudes upon his inner world. This is the first sign he is haunted, not by your body, but by your frequency, in Jungian language. What he experiences is the return of the repressed, the surfacing of parts of himself he buried to survive in a world that told him to be rational, detached, stoic. But the feminine does not ask permission to emerge. She simply rises. And when he meets her, in the gaze of a woman who knows herself, something ancient stirs, a remembering. But what he remembers is not always beautiful, is not always light. Because true feminine energy, the one that shakes him to his core, does not just remind him of comfort. It reminds him of chaos, of the mother who left, of the lover who broke him, of the softness he was taught to fear. He begins to confuse you with every unhealed wound he has ever carried. That is the danger of projection. You become both the goddess and the ghost, both medicine and mirror. He may start to imitate the very traits in you that he once disowned in himself. He will soften his voice around you. Grow curious. Speak in metaphors without knowing why. He might even talk about dreams his or yours. And if he dares, he will ask what you feel, not what you think. But this does not mean he is ready, because obsession in the shadow is not love. It is longing without direction. It is hunger with no table to eat from. He will orbit you like a forgotten moon, never quite landing, never quite leaving. This is the paradox of the man trapped between admiration and avoidance. He cannot touch you, but he cannot unsee you either. And what about you? You begin to feel the tug. His presence lingers long after he's gone. You sense the eyes on you that you cannot prove. You hear from his friends that he asks about you, indirectly, curiously. You feel the weight of attention without the anchor of commitment. This is the second sign. His energy reaches you before his words do, and the deeper truth one you must understand to protect your heart is that obsession is a symptom of fragmentation. Of a man who has not integrated the sacred feminine within till he meets her in himself. He cannot truly meet her in you. It's not fully, not deeply. It's not without distortion. You are not a wound to be reopened. You are not a ghost to be chased, are not a dream to be undone by doubt. You are the mirror of his unconscious yearning. He's still asleep to the storm within him, thinks he wants you, but what he craves is wholeness. Some women will mistake this obsession for intensity, for romance, for fate. But those who have walked the fires of individuation, who have met their own shadows and held themselves in the dark, know better. They do not confuse emotional possession with spiritual partnership. They recognize the ache in his eyes and offer no bandage-inly boundaries. They understand that to be wanted is not the same as to be seen, and that to be chased is not the same as to be met. Still, the obsession grows. It grows in the pauses of conversations, in the way his demeanor shifts when others speak your name, and how he watches your social media without engaging, and how he reacts not to what you post but to what you don't. This is the third sign. He responds to your absence louder than he ever did to your presence, because in absence, he no longer has to face you. He faces only the image of you crafted, idealized, worshipped in the safety of distance. The further you pull away, the stronger the hold becomes. Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. Freedom, depth, mystery. The untouched part of him that screams for liberation but is too afraid to bleed for it. You must understand, obsession is not about you. It is about him. It is about his war with himself, with what he suppressed, with the abyss he refuses to name. You are not his salvation. You are a symbol, a spark, a chance. But a woman of depth does not fall for symbols. She watches. She waits. She listens not to his words, but to her own body, her own intuition, her own knowing. Because obsession in the shadows is loud, but it is not truth, not yet. And so she remains still, not cold, not indifferent, but sovereign, grounded in the temple of her own body, unmoved by the storms he cannot name. She feels his pull. Yes, but she no longer confuses proximity with connection. For a woman who has met herself in the silence of midnight does not chase ghosts. She knows. Not all who seek you are capable of holding you, and he is seeking. He may not say it, In fact, he may go silent for weeks, but still he watches. The algorithm betrays him. The glimmer of his name in your viewer list, the post he likes. From 3 years ago, the mutual friend who mentions he asked how you were. Obsession is not always loud. Often it is digital, distant, disguised. And yet the feminine knows. It senses the echo of thought before it becomes action. It tastes the desire behind his silence. It feels the weight of unspoken longing in the pauses between your encounters. May think he's hiding well. The unconscious always leaks. He may start to mimic your language, your mannerisms, your rhythms, not out of mockery, but because resonance seeks resonance. You have become an internal compass, symbolic north he does not understand, but feels drawn to. Jung spoke of synchronicity, the alignment of outer and inner worlds without a visible cause. With you, he experiences this. Numbers, songs, memories, all pointing to you. And it unnerves him. He might attempt to rationalize his obsession, dismiss it, find flaws in you just to anchor himself back into logic. But reason is powerless against the archetype. You have become more than a woman. You are an idea, a vibration, a portal. In this portal, he glimpses a version of himself. That frightens him not because it is monstrous, but because it is true. The truth. He craves to be seen, not just praised. He longs to collapse into a love that doesn't coddle his ego, but challenges his soul. And yet he is terrified. Such love does not let him hide. This is what you mirror, the invitation to wholeness. Not the fantasy, not the chase, but the return to the forgotten parts of him buried under years of denial. And to accept this invitation, he must shed the masks that made him feel safe. That is the agony of shadow work, the death of the false self. And so, he may resist. He may even find someone else, someone easier, more available, less threatening to his carefully constructed persona. But do not be fooled. His body may be with her, but his mind will return to you, not because you fed his ego, but because you touched his shadow with your light. That is the paradox of deep feminine energy. It awakens even as it destabilizes. It comforts even as it confronts. To a man still ruled by his ego, this feels like danger. To a man ready to grow, it feels like truth. But what does he do with this obsession? Some men retreat, others transform. The ones who retreat will spiral. In cycles of craving and avoidance, they will seek you through others, in half-familiar faces and almost kindred souls. But nothing fits. Nothing soothes. Because you were never just a woman. You were the mirror. And when the mirror disappears, so does their reflection. The ones who transform, they are rare. They are the ones who begin the descent, who face the monsters beneath their bed, who ask not, how do I get her back? But what part of me was I running from when I lost her? These men do not beg for love. They rebuild their souls. They meet their anima. They begin the long burning, holy work of becoming whole. And when they return, if they return, it is not as beggars, but as equals. But until then, your stillness is your sanctuary, your silence, your spell. For the woman who knows her worth does not perform. She does not audition for obsession. She does not play the muse to a man unwilling to create his own masterpiece. She simply is. And that is the most terrifying thing of all. For a man who is not yet ready to be fully seen, stillness, then, becomes the altar upon which the feminine rests. She does not tremble at his distance. She does not bend at his silence. She knows the dance of obsession in the shadow realm is not a love story, but a rite of passage. For him, not for her, she has already passed through the fire. She has already descended into herself, found the buried girl curled in shame, the silenced voice echoing in her womb, and she brought them both home. She is not a fantasy. She is not a cure. She is not a reward for a man who has not yet dared to meet his own darkness. And so she waits not for him, but within herself. She tends to the sacred, not the spectacle, because she knows a man may be obsessed with your mystery, but only one who has met his own demons can hold your truth. So what happens next? Often, the obsession intensifies. The distance begins to torment him, not because you are cruel, because absence becomes the mother of memory. And he starts to remember you not as you were, but as he experienced you raw, radiant, untouchable. You become a symbol etched into his subconscious. He will try to erase you, but you will haunt. His choice of music, the women he dates, the conversations he avoids. You are now a thread in the tapestry of his becoming. Yet you did not weave yourself there. He did. This is the cost of projection. A man casts his anima onto a woman and forgets that she is not his to shape, that she has a story, a fire, a freedom, all her own. And if he does not awaken, he will blame her for the ache she leaves behind. He will call her too much, too distant, too difficult. But what he truly means is, she would not bend to fit. My fantasy, and you shouldn't, because the woman who is worshipped but not understood suffers a peculiar loneliness. She becomes the vessel for someone else's transformation while being denied. Her own. That is the cruelty of unconscious obsession. It consumes, but does not nourish. It clings, but does not cherish. It longs, but does not love. So what do, feminine one? You stay in your center. You return again and again to the breath, the body, the bloodline of your wisdom. You do not decode his silence. You do not chase his ghost. You know that the man meant to walk beside you will not tremble at the depth of your stillness. He will see your fire and not flinch, will feel your silence and not panic. He will look into your eyes and not project, but recognize. Until then, obsession is merely a signal, a flare from the unconscious, a cry from his soul that something in him is starving, that something in him remembers, something in him once touched truth and can no longer pretend it didn't. But that is his hunger to feed. It's not yours to fix. Do you see now? Obsession in the shadows is never about love. It is about the parts of ourselves that remain unlived. A man does not chase you, chases the part of himself that you illuminate. And if he cannot face what you awaken, he will try to dim you. But you are not here to be dimmed. You are not here to be manageable, digestible, or palatable. You are not here to be his initiation. You are here to be whole, to walk barefoot on the earth of your own becoming, to speak only when moved by truth, to give only from overflow, not emptiness, to love, not with the ache of needing to be seen, but with the fire of already having seen yourself, and so you let him go. Or rather, you let him spiral if he must. You release him not out of bitterness, but from the deep. Sacred knowing that your presence is not meant to be wasted on a man who only knows how to want you in the dark, because the woman who has become. Light does not shrink to fit someone else's shadow. She becomes the storm that calls the brave ones home. And there, in the silence of her sovereignty, something extraordinary begins to happen. She no longer interprets his absence as loss, but as space. Space for her breath to deepen, for her roots to anchor, for her truth to stretch into all the places she once abandoned to be loved. The obsession he carries, intense, restless, riddled with shadows, becomes less important to her. Not because it vanishes, but because she no longer needs to be needed. This is individuation in motion. Carl Jung spoke of the self, the whole, unified center of the psyche that arises only when the conscious and unconscious minds reconcile. Most men, this process begins not in comfort, but in crisis. Obsession is often the herald of that crisis. It cracks the surface, breaks the illusion of control. It strips a man of the masks he wore so long, he forgot his face beneath them. But this unraveling is sacred. Sometimes it begins with you, not because you forced him to change, but because you refused to diminish yourself for his comfort. It's in the moment when you no longer answer his late-night messages that he feels the echo. It's when you stop posting things meant to catch his eye, when you stop bending your intuition to meet his hesitation, when your silence becomes not a strategy, but a state of grace. That's when it hits him. He never truly had you. He only touched your shadow. Now with you gone, he is left with the void you once illuminated. You see, the feminine does not obsess. She magnetizes. Her power is not in the pursuit, but in her presence, in her alignment, in her refusal to abandon herself for approval. When a woman reaches this state, her energy changes. It becomes untouchable, not cold, not cruel, but sovereign. And this shift is what haunts a man the most. Because while obsession is born from lack, love real. Conscious, embodied love requires presence, and presence requires wholeness. So he is left with a choice. Not one he will make overnight, nor even consciously. But slowly, if he is willing, he may begin the descent. He may stop asking, "Why did she leave?" and start asking, "Who was I when I had her?" Or more truthfully, "Who was I pretending to be?" This is where transformation begins. In the mirror you once held up, in the quiet thunder of your absence, in the way you loved without begging and left without burning. But let's speak plainly now. To the part of you that still aches, it is not wrong to want to be desired. It is not weak to miss the way. His energy once hovered around you like perfume. It is human to wonder if he'll return, if he'll awaken, if he'll finally step into the fullness of the man. You glimpsed in his eyes, but never met in his actions. But the question is, no longer will he return. The question is, who are you becoming while he doesn't? Because obsession is not love, presence is. Obsession consumes. Presence connects. Obsession is the echo of a wound. Presence is the whisper of healing. And you, woman of depth and fire, were not born to be an echo. You were born to be the voice, to walk into a room and change its frequency, to love without losing yourself. 2. Be seen not as a muse, but as a mirror, a force, a storm wrapped in tenderness. And if he cannot meet you there, here in the sacred now, it is not a failure, it is protection. Because the man who is meant for you will not be obsessed. He will be devoted. It's not to owning you, but to knowing you. Not to chasing your light, but to standing in his own, so that your lights can meet in wholeness, not hunger. Until then, let him wrestle with his shadows. Let him dream of your silence. Let him spiral through the maze of his unspoken longing. And you choose peace. You choose embodiment. You choose the fierce, wild, steady act of choosing yourself again and again and again. Because the woman who understands her worth does not chase. She does not beg. She does not perform. The woman who understands her worth does not pursue, she chooses.